दिलों में प्यार की खुशबू तो होठों पर दुआ रखना। दिलों में प्यार की खुशबू तो होठों पर दुआ रखना। ईमान में वक्त से एक रिश्ता इश्क वफा रखना। ईमान में वक्त से एक रिश्ता।
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome back to another episode of Friday Sermon for Kids. Today I am joined by two incredible panelists, one of our regulars, Haris, and a new member, Hassan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to both of you, and welcome to the show, Hassan.
Wa alaikum assalam. I'm very excited to be here and to participate in the show.
That is very good to hear, and I'm sure you'll do great, Hassan. Now, in this week's Friday sermon, Huzoor continued to talk about the Battle of Uhud and the events that transpired within it. Now, let's listen to what Huzoor said in this week's Friday sermon.
आजकल खुतबात में ग़ज़वा उहद का ज़िक्र हो रहा है। जैसा कि ज़िक्र हुआ था कि मुसलमानों ने आम जंग में काफ़रों को सख्त नुकसान पहुँचाया और वो भागने पर मजबूर हो गए, लेकिन हज़रत सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के ताकीदी हुक्म के बावजूद भी जब दर्रे की हिफाजत पर मामूर अक्सरियत ने दर्रा खाली कर दिया तो दुश्मन ने उस तरह से हमला किया और मुसलमानों को शदीद नुकसान पहुंचाया।
I'm looking forward to discussing this week's topic and to learn more about this critical war in the history of Islam. Now, before we get into our discussion though, I want to know, what did both of you learn from this week's Friday sermon?
I learned that during the Battle of Uhud, Hazrat Hamzah attained martyrdom, and that filled the Holy Prophet ﷺ with grief.
The new thing that I learned this week was that some of the Muslims in the Battle of Uhud disobeyed the Holy Prophet ﷺ's orders and suffered great losses.
Excellent job to both of you. Now, I also want to know what all of you from across the globe have learned from this week's Friday sermon. So for that, let's head into our next segment, Kids Take.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In today's Friday sermon, I learned that not completely obeying the instructions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ caused great destruction to the Muslim army in the Battle of Uhud. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum. Brothers were told us to pray for the world peace. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In today's Friday sermon, beloved Huzoor Abdullah ibn Aziz told us that, saddened by the disrespect showed to Hazrat Hamzah's dead body, the Holy Prophet ﷺ wanted to do the same to the disbelievers. But according to Islam's teachings, the Holy Prophet ﷺ instructed the companions to respect the enemies' bodies. Jazakallah.
Wonderful job to all of you from across the globe, and like always, we love to see new faces, so send us your videos and we can inshallah include you in our next episode. So, in this week's Friday sermon, Huzoor, like I said earlier, continued to talk about the Battle of Uhud. And in this Friday sermon, Huzoor mentioned that the battle ultimately resulted in the loss of the Muslims. Now, Huzoor talked in more detail about this loss, and he stated that this outcome essentially started when the disbelievers themselves faced many losses, and as a result, they fled. Now, the Muslims saw this, and despite the instructions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, they went in pursuit of these disbelievers. Huzoor mentioned in his Friday sermon that some historians claim that the Muslims left their posts and pursued the disbelievers so that they could attain the spoils of war. Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, also mentioned that these historians say that this claim of theirs is based on the Holy Quran, specifically chapter 3, verse 153. Now, Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, also said in regards to these claims that they are not accurate, primarily because they do not depict the status of the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ correctly.
Wait, is it the spoils of war the main reason why wars are even fought?
Yeah, and the historians say that the belief is based on the Holy Quran, so doesn't that make it right?
Those are incredibly insightful questions, and Huzoor actually directly addresses them in his Friday sermon. So Huzoor says that the Muslims were willing and they did sacrifice everything and anything they had for the sake of Islam, and they wanted to attain the status of martyrdom in Islam. Now, if these two things were what Muslims were doing at the time, it wouldn't make sense that they left their ranks for the sake of spoils of war. Rather, Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, mentioned that the potential reasons that the Muslims may have left their posts was that they thought that the victory of Islam had occurred during the Battle of Uhud. So they wanted to celebrate the victory with the rest of the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Or those companions that left their positions during the Battle of Uhud wanted to fight face to face in combat directly with the other companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Now, in regards to the Quranic verse that the historians claim base their claims on, Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, mentions a quote by Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Rizal Anhu. And in this quote, Hazrat Muslim Rizal Anhu states that this verse of the Holy Quran from chapter 3, verse 153, and the idea that it presents of the worldly desire of the companions is not regarding the spoils of war. Rather, that worldly desire is the desire that the Muslims had to fight face to face with the disbelievers, despite the commands of the Holy Prophet ﷺ.
In other words, they wanted to fight alongside their fellow companions, which seemed like a much better option to them.
Exactly.
Farhan bhai, Huzoor mentioned the word mali ghanimat while talking about the spoils of war.
That's exactly right, and a good point at that too. Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, does mention the word mali ghanimat quite a few times. Now, for that, let's head into our next segment, Word of the Sermon, where our good friend Ubaid Rahman will help us understand this word a little better. So, take it away, Ubaid.
Jazakallah, guys. So, Mali Ghanimat, we have an Urdu compound word here today. The word mal means wealth and money, and the word ghanima actually means something you get during a special circumstance like a war. Put those together and you get war spoils. Mali Ghanimat is the wealth, weapons, and things you collect from the enemy after defeating them in a war. This is a very important subject in the topic of the Battle of Uhud. Back over to you guys.
Jazakallah Ubaid Rahman for that wonderful explanation. Now, I want to ask both of you. Huzoor talked about the Battle of Uhud and stated that quite a few people, especially Muslims, were martyred in this battle. Do you remember the two names in particular that Huzoor mentioned?
I think I remember. One of the individuals was Hazrat Hamzah's father, right?
Ah, exactly.
And the other one was Hazrat Hamzah Raziyatullah anhu.
Correct. So Huzoor talked about the martyrdom of both of these individuals in a bit more detail. Now, in regards to the martyrdom of Hazrat Hamzah's father, Huzoor mentioned that when the Muslims pursued the Quraysh army, Khalid bin Walid saw this of the Muslims and he actually circled his army back and attacked the Muslims. This resulted in a scramble. The Muslims were scrambling to fend off the offensive of the Quraysh army. In this scramble, Hazrat Hamzah's father was martyred because he was not recognized by one of the Muslims. Now, in regards to Hazrat Hamzah's martyrdom, Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, mentioned that Hazrat Hamzah was not only the uncle of the Holy Prophet ﷺ from the paternal side of the Holy Prophet, he was also the foster brother of the Holy Prophet ﷺ as well. Now, it was also stated by Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, that Hazrat Hamzah was a fierce and brave fighter. Wherever he turned, he tore down the ranks of the Quraysh army. Now, how he was murdered, Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, mentioned that it was an assassination attempt as a form of revenge by one of the Quraysh. So a slave by the name of Veshi was brought by the Quraysh and bribed with freedom if he managed to kill Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu. And so he laid in ambush waiting for Hazrat Hamzah. And so when Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu was finished attacking someone and was passing by that area, Veshi aimed at Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu and threw his small lance right at him. And it hit Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu right below the navel area. And so Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu, after the attack, collapsed, but managed to muster up some strength and lunge at Veshi. But he stumbled in this process, and that is how he gave his life. And so the news of Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu's passing, when it was provided to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the Holy Prophet ﷺ was very deeply saddened.
The unbelievable bravery of the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is so inspiring.
I know, and that is why the status is so high.
Good observations. And honestly, we can listen to all of these stories, and it's so inspiring to hear about the bravery and the vigor of the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Now, I hope both of you are ready for our next segment, because we are moving right into question of the sermon. All right, boys. Now I'm going to give you the question and you have 10 seconds to think of your answer. Ready? Now, here is the question. So, when Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu was martyred, Hazrat Jibreel ﷺ came down and told the Holy Prophet ﷺ that there was a particular name that was given to Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu that was spread across the 7 heavens. Now, here are your 4 options as to what that name was. Option A, servant of God. Option B, prophet of God. Option C, lion of God. Or option D, warrior of God. Now, your 10 seconds begin now. Okay, time is up. What are both of your guys' answers?
I think the answer is C.
Me too.
That is absolutely correct. The answer is C, lion of God. So the story, like I said earlier, is that Hazrat Jibreel ﷺ came down and told the Holy Prophet ﷺ that Hazrat Hamzah anhu was given the name Lion of God throughout the 7 heavens. Now, earlier you both mentioned the bravery of the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Now, a part of that bravery was their ability to forgive. And so, the idea of forgiveness is very much present during the incidences of the Battle of Uhud. So Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, mentioned that after the martyrdom of Hazrat Huzaifa radhiyallahu anhu's father, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, when he received this news, asked for blood money to be given. Now Hazrat Huzaifa radhiyallahu anhu, out of sheer forgiveness, decided that no, he did not want the blood money. And so Hazrat Huzaifa radhiyallahu anhu's status was elevated in the eyes of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and also in the eyes of Allah. Regarding the martyrdom of Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu, after the Ghazwa of Taif, Veshi, the slave that assassinated Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu, actually came to the Holy Prophet ﷺ and he converted to Islam. Now, the Holy Prophet ﷺ did forgive Veshi, but out of the love for Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu, told Veshi that, do not come in front of my eyes, because it deeply saddened the Holy Prophet ﷺ. In addition to this aspect of forgiveness from the Holy Prophet, we also see that this forgiveness was also present within the family members of Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu. So Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, mentions that after the assassination of Hazrat Hamzah radhiyallahu anhu, there was a tradition of the Quraysh that they damaged the bodies of the dead. Now, this was also done to the body of Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu. So when the Holy Prophet ﷺ was returning from the war, he saw Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu's sister approaching. And so he sent Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu to go and stop Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu's sister, so as to not let her see the damaged body of Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu. And so when Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu's sister was approaching, she did not stop when Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu told her to stop. Instead, the only time she stopped was when Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu said that this is the wish of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so that is when Hazrat Hamzah's sister provided Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu with 2 sheets of cloth that she wanted to put on the body of Hazrat Hamzah. And she also stated that she had a wish to see Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu's body, and she promised not to wail. And so when Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave her the permission, and when she laid eyes upon her brother's damaged body, she stood brave like a lion, although there were tears flowing down her eyes. And so it was also recorded, Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, stated that the Holy Prophet ﷺ stood next to Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu's sister, and his eyes were filled with tears as well.
That is so inspiring. How did they have so much patience?
Yeah, it's incredible how large the hearts are and how strong they were.
And I think this is the purpose of these stories. Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, inspires us and simultaneously teaches us a lesson in the process.
Did you enjoy this week's Friday Sermon for Kids? Want to know how you can make it even better? Tell us what you learned from beloved Huzoor's Friday Sermon and send your videos at FS4KIDS@mta.tv no later than every Sunday, and we'll try our best to include them in next week's episode. Now, we can't include all the videos you guys sent to us, so you guys can visit our Instagram and Twitter at MTA Canada and see all the videos you guys sent to us. Remember, at Friday Sermon for Kids, you're not just the audience, you make the show.
Now, boys, that brings us to the end of our episode. Let's give our audience a little recap of what we learned today.
Today, we talked about the Battle of Uhud, and Huzoor also mentioned some reasons why the companions might have left their post.
We also talked about how Huzoor mentioned that when the Muslims left their post, that the historian said that claim was actually wrong.
Exactly. Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, also gave us details about the martyrdom of 2 individuals in particular. The first was Hazrat Huzaifa radiallahu anhu's father, who was martyred in the scramble when the Quraysh army circled back and attacked the Muslims. The second story was about Hazrat Hamzah radiallahu anhu's martyrdom, which was an assassination attempt by the Quraysh as a form of revenge. Lastly, Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, mentioned that we should continue to pray for the Palestinians, and so that the world can take action against the cruelties that are being exacted on the people of Palestine. Now, for our audience at home, make sure that you watch the Friday sermon in your own time and stay tuned for our next episode. Until next time, Khuda Hafiz.
मगर है शर्त तुमसे मुसलसल राबता रखना, मगर है शर्त तुम उससे मुसलसल राबता रखना, इमाम वक्त से एक रिश्ता इश्क वफा रखना, दिलों में प्यार की खुशबू तो होंठों पर दुआ रखना, इमाम वक्त से एक रिश्ता इश्क वफा रखना, इमाम वक्त से एक रिश्ता इश्क वफा रखना।